Hello, this is Dr. Jacqueline with DTP-Leadership Group. This is Hot Topic Bold Talk. My podcast 101 is entitled Debating the Future: What the Vance-Walz Showdown Tells Us About Americans' Political Landscape. Now, what I'd like to do is to say that I think the recent vice presidential debate between Vance and Walz provided a glimpse into the state of American politics without the domineering presence of Donald Trump. Though the debate was civil, as expected, it also revealed critical truths about the candidates, the platforms, and what they represent to the future of our country. And it lets us unpack what we learned and why it matters. And so I want to go through that tonight because I think many of you really need to look at all the things that did happen. It's not about who won. It's really about what all happened in that process of the debate. Now, I'll say something to you. I think emotional polls that are right after a debate, they don't tell the whole story. Because immediately following the debate, the polls show a near tie between Vance and Walz. However, snap polls often reflect that emotional response. So J.D. Vance's efforts to appear composed and polite may have worked in his favor, but it does not erase the inflammatory and divisive rhetoric he has used continually. His attempts to soften his image might be strategic, but voters of y'all should know that you should not be swayed by a single debate performance. Walz, on the other hand, scored points when he challenged Vance on key issues like the January 6th, the abortions, revealing that the real J.D. Vance came to the surface because he couldn't cover what was going on inside him. Now, fact-checking the debates, Walz appeared very honest and Vance deflected. I have a lot of respect for the Forbes, so I'm going to provide their poll reviews in their article by Ray, who is a Forbes staff member, and it occurred on October 2nd. This is her beginning comment in that article. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz and Senator J.D. Vance, Republican, Ohio, faced off in a mostly polite yet policy-heavy vice presidential debate that we could describe as two Midwestern night skies. But poll viewers believe the Republican candidate narrowly bested his Democratic rival. But here are the facts, and I want to read you about the various polls. CBS News, which conducted the debate, released a snap poll of debate watchers shortly after the even, in which 42% of the respondents thought Vance won and 41 gave the edge to Walz and 17 thought it was a tie. According to the CBS poll, both candidates received a favorable boost after the debate, with Vance's numbers rising from 40% to 49%. CHC is not well liked by the public, while Walz's jumped from 52 to 60. Now, that gives you a real clear message about the difference between the two. It's also shown in this poll. The CNN poll also published showed a jump in favorability for both candidates, with the respondents who viewed Walz favorably rising from 46% to 59%, while Vance's numbers rose from 30 to 41. There's also another political snap poll where it was 50-50 which candidate won the debate, although independents gave Walz a 57-42%. Now, the betting market reacted. The betting market declared Vance the winner of the debate. This is complete inversion of before the debate, since they thought Walz would have 70% be the winner. When we analyze the debate, though, the lens of fact checking, Governor Walz emerged as the clear winner. His passionate defense of democracy and his focus on truth telling stood in stark contrast to Vance's evasions. While Vance may presented himself as being calmer and composed, his statements were riddled with inaccuracies, from the situation in Springfield, Ohio, to his claims about Trump's role in saving Obamacare, which is very untrue. And this highlighted a fundamental question to voters. Do you want leaders who tell the truth, or those who bend it to their advantage? Now, the January 6th moment was a damning no answer from Vance. In the New York Times, with Jess Bedgo's Goods article, it all seemed too conventional. And then came January 6th. And here are his observations. Senator J.D. Vance of Ohio was trying to unweird himself. Over the course of his debate, Vance did not directly repeat the most incendiary elements of the false and debunked claims he promoted last month about immigrants in Ohio. I think it's always tragic to realize that he is representing the state of Ohio. He did not talk about childless cat ladies because Walz didn't bring that up. But Vance, in the mind of many in his party, find him to have disparaging words that bother them. As Walz skipped opportunities to attack Vance more forcibly, Vance seized the opportunity to pitch a gentler view of himself. But when we present a false view of ourselves, then it's not true. And then came Walz's question about 2020 election. Vance had just promised Walz that if Walz and Vice President Harris won, that he would pray for them and wish them best wishes. Walz asked him whether Trump, who finished well behind President Biden in the Electoral College as well as popular vote 4 years ago, had lost the election. Vance evaded it by saying, "I'm focused on the future," Vance said, before trying to change the subject to censorship, which is one of the popular things that the right wing moves to. Then Walz goes after him and says, that is a damning no answer. It was a moment that laid the ground for seeing the deep gulf between the two men on stage, who seemed not to want to have a terribly confrontational debate. But it also made it clear that Vance, an ambitious political figure who may well be thinking about 2028 and beyond, will need a lot more than a fairly mild 90-minute debate if he ever wants to fully soften his image. America, I think, you've got a real clear choice in this election, Walz said. Who's going to honor our democracy and who is going to honor Trump? Now, I think it's fascinating that Republicans really are upset about the fact checking. They resisted. But, the fact checking wants to hold them accountable, and they don't want to be held accountable. One of the most concerning trends I think we see in this debate and throughout this time of the election, Vance's frustration with being fact-checked is something that many of his party hold as a problem. His claim that fact-checking was somehow unfair revealed a deeper issue within today's Republican Party, a resistance to be accountable and truthful. The Vance repeatedly made false statements about immigration, Trump's efforts to overturn the election, and yet refused to accept responsibility when he was called out by the moderators on these various issues. This growing trend of fact resistance is alarming to me, I think, and it should be to you, especially when the facts involve fundamental issues like our democracy, immigration, and healthcare. Now, the Washington Post has an excellent article on October 2nd. It's the 5-minute fix. And what they said was Republicans increasingly resist to being fact-checked presents really a serious concern for many people. The rules were that you guys weren't going to fact-check, said Vance to the moderators. That's a very revealing statement about the Republican vice presidential nominee. He was the more composed, maybe, candidate, yet he was responsible for most of the falsehoods in the 90-minute debate, says the Washington Post fact checker Glenn Kessler. Now, Vance greatly misstated the Haitian immigration status. He talked about overhousing and problems in schools and hospitals. He talked about them being illegal. There are thousands of Haitian immigrants in Springfield, most of whom are there legally, as Glenn explained. The argument that deporting illegal immigrants will drive down housing costs is ridiculous, says the Clinton administration immigration official, Doris Messner. And I've heard that statement in other articles. He described Trump's attempts to stay in power after he lost in 2020 as peaceful because he left the White House and he left the office. But the 2020 election was not peaceful. Asserting that is a way to ignore pretty much everything that happened. Trump's attempts to undermine the results in states he lost, trying to interrupt Congress's certification of the elections, as well as the attack on the Capitol by Trump supporters. As we know, Trump is facing federal charges, and there's a new document out and further statements about what all he did. You all may disagree with me, but honestly, I've thought all along the only reason Trump is running is so he can prevent himself from having criminal charges against himself. He'll have them waived if he becomes president. And I think that is tragic. I think people need to hold themselves accountable for what they do. And he seems to always trying to run away from accountability. Vance suggested Trump worked to improve Obamacare. Trump was invested in repealing Obamacare, but he didn't have anything to replace it with. Now, I'll admit the Governor Walz said a few things that were not factual, like Project 2025 will force women to register pregnancies, which we know that is not true from that document. And there were some issues around the way he responded about his issues around China. It's not just Vance, though. In last week, during the time of the debate and after, Trump and other Republicans, including Senator Ted Cruz from my state, Texas, distorted facts on everything from Trump's crowd size to the number of undocumented immigrants in the United States with criminal records, says the Post, Aaron Blake, who also fact checks. Now, The most detailed facts checking came with the Washington Post at 11:56 on October 2nd. So if you want to see the detail, it's massive about what Vance said and then the few things that Walz said. What's interesting in that article, every time that Vance makes a statement that is false, because a major portion of this fact checking on the debate was about Vance. And what they said every time was, this is false. And then they would give statements about what the truth was. The few times that Walz did something, they said this is largely accurate, but then they would show where it wasn't accurate. But at least Walz was more on target and certainly did less than Vance did. Now, throughout the debate, Vance made it clear that he is, in many ways, a more polished version of Donald Trump. He champions the same policies, echoes the same falsehoods, and yet presents himself as a composed Ivy League educated leader. This duality, being Trump-like while attempting to soften his public image, was on full display at the debate. Yet for all of his efforts to distance himself from Trump or more outrageous behaviors, Vance remains deeply tied to the former president's agenda, especially when it comes to undermining democracy and restricting reproductive rights. All of you need to understand that when he ran for senator in Ohio, he was very strongly against any form of abortion. As the debate showed, Vance is Trump 2.0, a candidate willing to distort the truth in order to try to win. Now, Philip Bum in the Washington Post also had something about Vance being 2.0, and I want to give some factual data that he gives. The senator from Ohio and the Republican vice presidential nominee presented himself as the upgraded version of Trump. All Trump's policies, all his falsehoods. But it was packaged as a Yale law student graduate, someone who exuded the mannerisms and satisfaction of an experienced academic debater. Vance established a platform which I hope you recognize in the debate. When he was asked to explain something that he or his running mate had done or promised, he parlayed questions into things he wanted to talk about instead. We've already heard his responses about healthcare and about what Trump said, what he said about Trump and trying to save Affordable Care Act, which he did not do. But I think the interesting thing is if you watched him, when he was called on his behavior of avoiding answering the question, then he became even more vocal. So they finally shut down his mic sometimes because of what he was doing. Vance stumbled when obviously he was presented with a position that he could not dodge. He is a Trump running mate in part because he's willing to parrot and champion Trump's claims about questioning the validity of the 2020 election and how it should have been addressed. The problem of being Trump 2.0 is Vance is still tied to Trump's idiosyncratic behavior. I think Vance revealed to all of us the clear recognition of what the Republican ticket is about. It's out of step with American people on one of the major issues, abortion. I've read over and over again since the overturn of Roe versus Wade to now that 63% of Americans believe abortion should be legal in all or most cases. Abortion is hardly the only issue where Vance attempted to offer a softer view, and yet his statements show the distorted perception of what America really wants. One of my favorite articles is one that is sad and disturbing. However, it's an extremely honest one. These from the Washington Post again on September 29th. And it's letters to the editor. And the title of it is, I'm from Springfield. What Trump did to us should be a warning. Here's what this person said. You know who's not afraid to go out and about in Springfield? Proud Boys, neo-Nazis, people handing out Ku Klux Klan flyers. Some of these people paraded swastika flags and rifles during our jazz festival. Their pressure and a torrent of threats forced local officials to cancel the annual Cultural Fest celebration of diverse food, arts, and music. These far-right groups clearly feel as though they have not just permission, but encouragement from Republican candidates. It is unsettling to live in this menacing environment. Mr. Trump and Mr. Vance hope to make every town Springfield, where the angry are emboldened by lies and the people they seek to punish live in fear. As someone who has lived through this transformation, trust me, you don't want to live in Trump's America. So let me repeat that. As someone who's lived through this transformation in Springfield, trust me, you don't want to live in Trump's America. Now I will conclude this by saying the Vance-Walz debate revealed much about both of these candidates. On the one hand, we have Tim Walz, who stands firmly for democracy, truth, and transparency. On the other, we have J.D. Vance, who depicts his and despises his attempts to try to be moderate, and continues to embrace Trump's falsehoods. And when I say despises what he's doing, his stumbling through not being able to answer questions was because he can't figure out what to say. Because I don't know what he's doing, but he knows he's in trouble when he has to answer some things. And as voters, I think this debate gave a real clear message. We must all ask ourselves, do you want leaders who uphold truth and democracy, or those who twist the facts for political gain? In the end, this debate was about more than these two candidates. It was about the future of our country. Thank you for listening.